About 10 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom with 6 kids, and I had done a really good job of recreating school in my home. I mean, a really good job, to the point where I had my children dressed in uniforms to come to the dining room table. I did that. We were doing curriculum. We were doing a classical curriculum. We were coming down to the dining room table and we were doing the math and the Latin, and we had all of the workbooks, all of the tests, all of the quizzes, everything was done, every single page was completed, and my kids were getting good grades. We also were doing a classical co-op. So we would go to co-op and we would come home and complete assignments. And that was our life. Co-op and assignments, co-op and assignments. But none of that was working. And so what do we have as a result of that? Well, I had children that were compliant but disengaged. I had late nights when I was up researching the best curriculum, because even though we had all this stuff, something was still missing. And I was looking for the perfect curriculum that would give me what I thought to be the perfect kids. And none of that was working. So although we were very academically successful, who we were being was lethargic, inauthentic, checked out. Who I was being, I was worried, I was anxious, I was fearful. Am I going to mess my kids up? That's why I had to find the perfect curriculum, so the perfect curriculum would give me those perfect kids. And none of that was working. So burnout and depression led me to consider something I said that I would never do. I began to research, well, what else is there in this world of homeschooling that could then give me what it is that I'm looking for? And I discovered some families that seemed to be very carefree. They seemed to be very light, the exact opposite of what I was. They were joyful, and their kids had this inspiration that led them to do things that they loved to do. And their parents had this very easy way of being with their kids. And I didn't have any of that. And so I said, well, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And as I leaned in to discover who these parents were, to my surprise, I realized that they were unschoolers. Unschoolers, something that I said I would never do. I said I would never unschool my kids. I call that unparenting. I call that letting your children run amok all over the house. Who does that? Who would really let their kids do that? Certainly not I. Not me, who has a degree in elementary education. Not me, who has all of this classical curriculum all over the place. I could never unschool, but I also could not stay where we were, because where we were wasn't working. So I said, well, what would be possible if I invented this way for my kids to be curious, for them to be passionate, for them to be trusted, and for me to be at peace? And so we did that. We invented it as a possibility, and but I wasn't letting go right away. We would have classical mornings and delight-driven afternoons, where in the morning I would sit the kids down and we would do our classical education, and then in the afternoon they were able to be delighted, and I became their assistant instead of their teacher. And I saw something very special happen. That light that I used to see when they were children, when they were much younger, I saw that light come back. I didn't have to force them to do anything. The very thing that I was trying to get them to do and force them to do during our classical mornings, they wanted to do on their own because it was of their own choice and they gave their consent to it. And so we did that for a minute, right? Classical mornings and delight-driven afternoons, until one day I came downstairs and the children had started delight-driven afternoons before breakfast. And I'm standing there and I had this whole parent-teacher conference in my head. the teacher in me said, make them stop, make them stop. Take that delight off of your faces. Put that curiosity in your back pocket. It is not time for you to be passionate. It is time for you to sit down and do this classical education. That's what it's time to do. But the mother in me said, if I stop this, I'll be stopping true learning just for the sake of teaching. And it's at that moment that the mother retired the teacher. And that's when we began unschooling. Shortly after that, my husband became diagnosed with leukemia. And that meant an hour drive to the hospital, a 6 to 8 hour stay, and an hour drive back for he and I every other day, which meant that the kids had a lot of time alone to pursue those interests. About a year of that, and my husband passed away. And so now here I am, a widowed single mom with 6 kids. Now, I had been a stay-at-home mom for 16 years, and I did not have an income. And so I said, well, what am I to do? I have to figure out a way to provide for my family, but I also wanted to continue this beautiful unschooling lifestyle that we had created. And so I began to explore options for my kids. And I also began on the side a job where I was consulting and teaching other families how they could create this liberation parenting and unschooling experience for their children. That's when I met a mom. And after listening to what unschooling is, she said to me with tears in her eyes, she said, this would save my son, because right now he's failing in public school. He's failing academically and he's failing emotionally. He does not see that he fits in this system. He doesn't fit, and so he doesn't see himself as successful. And so as a result, he's making choices that are unhealthy. And she said, this would save him, but I cannot stay at home to unschool him. Don't you want to start a school? And I said, no, I really don't. But I could not ignore where I was in life, being a newly minted single mom, and then this single mom asking me to create this solution for her son. So I began my research. And that's when I found all of these other schools that were already in existence, Sudbury schools and Agile Learning Centers and other democratic and independent free schools. And I said, this is exactly what I want to create. And so that is how the Genius School began. But, I wanted to create something that worked everywhere, not just where I lived, and not just for families that could stay home with their kids, but a solution that would be for families everywhere and for families that couldn't stay home with their kids. And so this idea of an international network of micro self-directed learning genius communities is exactly what our genius communities are. And so if you find that you were like me, there was something in the way your kids were learning, their school environment that just wasn't working for you, and you identified for you what's missing that would make all the difference in the world, ask yourself this question. Who do your children never get to be in learning in school? Who do you never get to be in learning in school? What is that? And what difference would that make if they could actually be that? How would your life be different? How would your relationship with your children be different? And that possibility, that's what I'm inviting for you to bring to a Genius conversation, and then build that with us in a local Genius community. My name is Karima Akila, and this is my origin story.